I'm here with Vanessa.
Hello. I'm Vanessa.
And where are we?
We are currently in Nihonbashi in Tokyo, Japan.
We are.
Which is crazy, on the other side of the world.
Should we try to say something in Japanese?
いい天気ですね。
いい天気です。いい天気です。最近元気？
元気です。
元気です。
おかげさまで。あなたも？
元気です。
はい。
元気です。なんで？
アイスラテ。
Ice latte! We like coffee a lot. We actually just had like the cutest little interaction at a coffee shop with our limited Japanese, but
Our 10 words.
our 10 words. So I would actually love to ask you about that. And I still want you to give an introduction. But
Okay.
maybe first, can you just tell us what it's like to be a manga artist finally in Japan for the first time? What is that like?
You know, like, when you have, like, when you're a kid and they're like, what's your dream? Like, ew, I'm 20. 10 years ago? That's so weird. I would be like, yeah, I dream to be a mangaka. But, like, as you grow up, you're like, that's so unrealistic. Like, what is going on? But then it's like, now that I'm here, it's like, no, that's like a dream come true. That's, like, actually how life is. So I think that's what life is like, being a mangaka in Japan as someone who's not Japanese. Is
That's actually so
having
cool.
their dream come true.
But you don't speak Japanese, right?
Skoshi. And by skoshi, I mean, that's it. That's all I know. Chotto. Skoshi and chotto are the only, like, words I know. But, yeah, I don't speak any Japanese. When I hear it, I can understand a little bit, but
Yeah.
not to the extent that I should.
Same. But, so, you don't speak Japanese,
Mm-mm.
but you make manga, which is
Yes.
a form of language, perhaps.
Yeah. Art is like, when you're at a loss of words, like, art is the way to communicate to people. And so, in a sense, even though I can't communicate in Japanese to the Japanese people, because manga originated in Japan, it's very well known. It's comics is what it is. It's Japanese comics. And so people are familiar with it, and it's a part of their pop culture. And so it's like how people can talk about music and share their music tastes. When I come to Japan, I can share my love and my passion for manga, and that's a way I can communicate my passions and my loves.
That's so cool. And I'm so glad you're here, first of all.
Thank you.
So I would love to know, and I'm sure our listeners would love to know, just a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and how you got here.
So, my name is Vanessa. I am 20 years old, born and raised in Florida.
America人です
ね。America kara desu. How did I get here? It's actually kind of interesting, because I never knew anyone in Japan, never, like, knew anyone from here or even how to get here, until I decided, oddly enough, I grew up in a secular school, and so I was like, hey, if I'm going to proclaim myself as a Christian, I would like to know what the heck I'm talking about. So I decided to go to a Christian school, and in doing... For college, yes. So I went to a Christian university, and in the program I got in at that school, I'm required to travel overseas.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. I'm in a world leadership, Christian leadership, or like how to lead in a global setting as a Christian. And so... So, because of that, there was an opportunity through MTW, and then I found...
What is MTW?
So, MTW is Mission to the World, so it's a missions program that allows you to do internships in different parts of the world, and one of them is Tokyo Community Arts is one of their, like, subsections, which is an arts program in Tokyo. And so with a girl who always wanted to go to Japan, let alone like really Tokyo, wanting to learn more about my faith, I feel like it was God calling me, like, no, this is where you're meant to be. Like, yes, you, in seeking him, I feel like my passions are now being exercised. So through him, thank you, Lord.
That is actually so beautiful. About that, though, I'm curious. So you're a Christian and you're a manga artist.
Yes.
And I typically don't really think of those two things as going together.
No.
But how did those components of your life relate or maybe blend?
For me, I think that Christianity has, especially in manga, is not really discussed about, and that's probably because in Japan, less than 1% of the population is Christian. And so what happens is when Christianity is showcased, a lot of times it is through the eyes of how Christianity has been portrayed in pop culture. In America, Christianity, whether people like it or not, has had a massive effect on pop culture. And because Japan is not interacting with Christianity, they're interacting with pop culture. That's kind of how they perceive it.
Okay.
And so a lot of times it's wrong or it's just like not completely how Christianity is actually or should be portrayed. And so when I want to combine being a Christian and making manga, I obviously want to incorporate like my Christian ideals and beliefs, because that's a huge part of my identity, is rooted with Christ. But also, I don't want to be pushing it in people's faces. I don't think, some people are meant to preach Jesus out on the streets, but a lot of people do not resonate or convert because someone just preached on the street.
Yeah.
And so how
it's
I
kinda
try...
in your face.
Yeah, in your face. And because people have a misconception of what Christianity really is, or people, even back in the States or all over the world, have had a poor experience with Christianity because of man's fallen nature. I want to communicate Christianity not in your face, like not making like some people are making the Bible as a manga, and although that's very cool, if you're not Christian or you don't like Christianity, it's really hard to interact with that.
True.
So I want...
Or be introduced to it.
Be like, oh yeah, I'll pick this up, or be like, this looks interesting. So I want my manga to be like a gateway for people to question Christianity as a way not to like doubt it, but as an I want to learn more, or, oh, this is what maybe being Christian could look like. Let me look more into that. So I try to portray Christianity through the little things, like how a character acts. Maybe they'll choose to be loving or forgiving, or questioning loneliness and what's that like, and why you need a community and why you need people and you can't just live by yourself and things like that.
That's actually really cool. And like so relevant, not just for Japanese people, but also for Americans. So I'm excited to read your manga. Also, I know that part of your manga is going to be displayed at this next concert next week.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Together concert for Ishikawa?
Yes, I would love to. So on June 27th, we are having this Together concert, is what it's called. And basically, it's a lot of the interns, because this is an internship, showcasing their art on what their time has been on in Japan, but also for the Japanese to explain how their time with Americans or wherever we're from has been in general. So it's this idea of, even though we're from two different cultures, we're able to come together and share our love of the arts and our perspectives. And so for me, I am an American. I'm not Japanese. I'm white. But I'm making manga, which is a Japanese art form. So what is an American perspective of doing an adaptation, I guess,
Yeah.
or if you were to call it manga, so a Japanese art style, how has that impacted my time here in Japan and how others will communicate with me?
Yeah.
And so it's not a solely Japanese perspective. It's like an American perspective on Japan through the use of a language they speak in. And
That's
in this
actually
sense,
really cool.
The language being like manga or art or whatever. But
I'm so obsessed. And I really can't wait to see it. Are you at all
excited.
Are you excited or are you nervous?
I am both. I'm nervous sighted.
Aren't you giving a speech in Japanese?
I am giving a speech in Japanese. Shout out to Meg, who's literally, I put it in a translator and I sent it to her and I was like, please translate this.
We love Meg.
Thank you, Meg.
Gambare. You got this.
But, yeah, so I'm giving a speech in Japanese, so it's, you know, trying to familiarize myself with the language, and because my art is trying to communicate with the Japanese population, I found it really fitting to speak in their language. That way I am literally communicating to them.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, I'll meet you where you are rather than forcing you to meet me where I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm giving my speech on my manga and just kind of what's brought me here, what it's about, why I wrote about what I did and drew about what I did and all that fun stuff.
What is your manga about? Just give us a little teaser.
A quick synopsis. So the manga's called My Room, and it basically follows a girl as with all her interactions with the little things, whether that's trinkets, keychains, figures, acrylics, whatever you want, all the little things in her interactions with it, whether it's like opening a blind box or going to the store and picking out manga, all like the little loves. And even though those do bring her happiness, and obviously there's like this, my art style is very hyper feminine, and so it's like glittery and gushy and sparkly, and you feel like kind of bubbly when you read it. Even though those feelings are true, deep down there's also kind of this, you can have so much stuff, but that doesn't replace anything. It might add, but it never replaces anything. So like if you don't have like people in your life, you can't replace them. So it's a little bit of,
it's kind of philosophical.
It is like has a bit of like a commentary on the not only the need for others, but also a huge problem in the United States and in Japan, of over-consumerism.
Ooh.
And especially how that's affected since COVID, of people being like, instead of socializing or finding comfort in your community, turning to the things you have, whether because it's close, like super close to you, or it's visually pleasing or whatever. And again, those things aren't bad in themselves, but true joy comes from people, which is also a little counterintuitive, which comes across in the manga, of people are also the reason why a lot of people are hurting. So how do you
got
find,
both sides.
Yeah, so how do you find a balance when you do go outside and you do communicate with others? How do you know you're seeking joy when a lot of times it can bring you pain? So
ooh, I'm like really excited to see this now. Thanks for the little teaser. I have another question, sort of related, because you are kind of talking about philosophy, and I know you have classical education, right? Okay, so do you mind if I ask you a little philosophical question?
We'll try not to talk too long.
Okay, let's go. Okay, so this podcast is called The Purpose of Beauty podcast, and I'd love to ask you your thoughts on what is the purpose of beauty in your own life?
Well, okay, I'm gonna have a Christian and a philosophical aspect to this answer.
Please.
So, I think, like, the true, the good, and the beautiful are all tied together. And I believe as man, like, we're created in the image of God, and God is good in his nature. And so by being created in his image, it is in our nature to strive for him, so to strive for the good. But because of the fall, our heart is wicked. So even though it's in our we have like this dualistic like human nature where it's like we're made to strive for the good, yet we constantly choose the bad. Ooh. Take that as you will.
That's so deep.
So Plato, so now I'm hopping to the other side. Plato, in describing beauty, when he has this conversation with Diotima, and basically they have this idea of trying, what is the good? How do you know whether we're going toward the good? And what does that look like? And he's like, okay, Diotima, what does a lover of the good do? And she's like, I don't know. And then he was like, okay, let's change the question. What does a lover of beautiful things desire? And he's like, oh, a lover of beautiful things desires beautiful things. And so what does a lover of the good do? A lover of the good decides, like, he desires good, all that is good and true. And so I'm paraphrasing it a bit, but it kind of shows there's a connection between truth and goodness and truth, goodness, and beauty. That, like, what the good and the true are desirable, and that's beautiful, that people desire, like, what is good and beautiful, or sorry, what is good and true. And so I believe it plays a huge role in my life, because that what is beautiful is aiming toward what is good and true. And as a Christian, being a follower of Christ, God is all that is good and all that is true. So
he is like the ultimate source of all beauty, goodness, and truth, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he's that source of beauty. So I feel like that's how it impacts our life, is when you're going after the good and the true in a right way, that in itself is beautiful. So
that's amazing.
Hopefully that didn't make everyone even more confused. But.
Well, you also said when we were talking earlier that humanity can't exist without art. Why is that?
Ooh, okay. So because God created all what is, like, true, and there's a common saying, or there's a phrase called, all truth is God's truth. And because God's truth exists and God's truth is beautiful, you can't... Living in a true world, you also live in a beautiful world. And so, in a way, because humans, again, are made in the image of God, we are beautiful in our creation. And so you can't innately take beauty out of that. So when it comes to human nature... what I was kind of talking about was when it comes to art, because I also believe that art is engraved in human nature. You cannot take art away from humanity. It does not happen.
Right.
There's a scene from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning where these men are in a concentration camp, and, hypothetically, their humanity is stripped from them, right? They're not treated as human. They're not regarded as human. They're almost they are treated less than human. And yet, there are pages in that book that describe how they saw sunset and they called it beautiful. So
that's actually so beautiful.
So even in the darkest time, like when there's no hope and everything, like you don't know when you'll see your family again, you don't know when your next meal is, they're still able to recognize beauty. And there's another scene in that book where the prisoners, put on shows on a stage.
Actually?
Yeah. And it's both the guards and the prison mates. And so you have this, like, combination of two peoples from two total different areas. Like, one does a stand-up comedy show, and they're like, wow, he's not even funny. It's so funny that he's not funny. But it shows that, like, again, in the darkest times, we can find things like sunsets beautiful, and we can also put on shows and perform and do art when everything is telling us we can't. So
that reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote. You may have heard it, but it's a quote. Yeah, I love C.S. Lewis. But there's a quote that he says in one of his books or writings about how we don't love winter, but the proof against it. The cozy sweaters and the warm fireplaces and the hot chocolate that prove that we can still have warmth in the coldness, and we can still experience good things in winter. So it's like we don't really love the season of winter, but we love all the warm things about the season of winter. It's kind of the same, it sounds like, what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm also going to pull another C.S. Lewis quote.
Go for it.
From The Four Loves, which is, like, so good. Highly recommend. When talking about art, he talks about how lovers are often looking into each other's eyes, like looking into each other, but friends are always side by side looking forward. And I feel like that's another thing, is like friendship, and even portrayed through art, are always looking toward something. And Aristotle calls the good that what we aim toward. So I feel like it's another callback to, we are made like the image of God to aim for the good, which is to aim for
Not to
God.
pull one more C.S. Lewis quote on you, but the Aristotle quote that you just said reminded me of when he uses the word Sehnsucht, or we call it Sehnsucht in English, but it's German. And it's the longing for we know not what.
As Christians, I think we know what, but
I would agree. But I love the idea that even in English is hard. Even in concentration camps, like, even in the darkest of times, beauty still exists. And I think that's incredibly hopeful. So, speaking of like some of the paradoxes of life, do you have an artist paradox?
Could you elaborate on an artist paradox?
An artist paradox? So, like, for me, I'm a dancer, but I also love science. And so sometimes I use science to create dances that are based on chemical structures or diagrams. And it seems like, yeah, you shouldn't love both art and science, but I think you can. But I feel like that is what can bring me creativity or inspiration. What brings you inspiration or is an important part of your own artistic life that might not be typically considered like artistic?
Yeah, for my art, I would say my two things that like don't go together, my artistic paradox, is, we've kind of already talked a little bit about it, is my love for philosophy. So this deep questioning of human existence. Why do we act like that? Why do we exist? Like, what is that, like, almost from a non-Christian perspective, even though you can argue we come to the same conclusion. While also, my art, I believe, being a girl, I love things that I could communicate with, like, as a little girl. And so even though my art isn't for little girls per se, I would love for girls to interact with it and be able to express, like, this feminine feel. So I have this, like, a large part of my inspiration is anything from when I was a little girl. So, like, Littlest Pet Shop, Animal Crossing.
Oh my gosh, it's been a minute.
Yeah, anything flowery, My Little Pony, like, all these, like, little girl feels, like playing the Nintendo DS, playing video games, like playing a dress-up game or a hairstyling game or a fashion game, and all that kind of fun vibe that...
Care Bears?
I was not a Care Bears girly, actually. No,
they're so cute. I totally pegged you as the dream win.
I watched it growing up a little bit, but I was never, like, obsessed. I was obsessed with Littlest Pet Shop and My Little Pony, though.
Of course you were.
Yeah. And so, but anyways, I love communicating through that feel, because that's probably, even though it wasn't probably the time I was happiest, I don't know what scientific thing it is, but it's whatever nostalgia does, that all, like, you look back and you're like, that was probably the happiest time in my life, even though I know it's not the happiest time in my life.
Well, it's like coming home.
Yeah, it is like coming home. It's a tadaimasu. And so I love, my art is very heavily inspired by that almost like childish Y2K era feeling. And so you take this hyper feminine, girly, sparkly, hot pink, hot orange, yellow, flowery,
Glitter.
sparkly, glitter. Like, literally, you take, like, this almost excessive, like, aesthetic that, like, you can almost feel when you look at it. And then you take something like, what's the purpose of life? Like, how do you pair that together?
Yeah, how do you pair that together?
So what my art tries to do is also, if you can't already tell, I really like anything happy. I think, like, one thing my mom always said is, like, whatever you do, Vanessa, whatever you make, like, obviously do it all for the glory of God, but also do it to uplift mankind, because there's so much stuff out there that is very heavy. And even though that stuff can be good, we are missing so much of the light, or, like, people seeing what it can be good. And so my art is meant to uplift people. And so how I do this is through my art style being happy and glittery. And so anyone, no matter if you're philosophical, if you're like an old wise mage, or like if you're just a little girl who likes pink stuff like I do, I want you to be able to pick this up and interact with it at your own level. So you can look at it and be like, oh, that's so cute, and move on and maybe never read it again. Or you could read it and be like, oh, that was cute. And then you start looking through the pages and being like, oh, she has a mirror here. What does this repetitive imagery of mirroring like look like? Or what does, like, she feels lonely. What is this commentary on? Is it just like, oh, she finds love happily ever after? Or is this like a commentary of, do you need people? Like, can you live without people?
That's deep.
So one of my examples that I'll talk about at the event, but my biggest one that I like to talk about is I have this repeating imagery of these convex mirrors, which are these like rounded, almost like 0.5 looking mirrors. And it's all over Japan, which, by the way, my manga is inspired by my time here in Tokyo, and it takes place in Tokyo. And you have these convex mirrors all around Japan. But in the Middle Ages, convex mirrors were often portrayed as the eye of God in medieval paintings.
Wait, that's so cool.
Yeah, and so because again, like this Christian influence, when I'm putting these mirrors in and you see her in this like 0.5 drawing, it's like you can look at it and be like, wow, that's so cool. This artist knows how to draw in like a 6-point perspective. Or you can look further and say, no, every time she's painting this convex mirror and seeing this girl in the reflection, you're seeing her through the eyes of God, and you're seeing how God is watching over her. And so
my mind is blown. That's so cool.
So you can look at it and be like, oh, that's cool. But then you could also be like, okay, wait, what is the symbolic meaning behind this? So
wow. Okay, I'm like so excited to see your concert, or the Ishikawa concert now. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh yes, of course.
I know we're getting close on time, but I have one more question for you.
All right.
I'm going to ask you to share with us one piece of advice that you have for us, or Bible verse. And while you think about it, I'm going to give a brief goodbye to our listeners. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more about Vanessa, I will link her Instagram. Is that okay with you?
Yes, I have to create a new one for my artist account because I literally haven't done it yet. But now that I'm going to be an actually publishing artist, yes, I'll send you that one.
Let's go. So I'll try to put that below. So if you want to get in touch with her, I'm sure she would love to hear your thoughts. Now, thank you so much for listening, and here's one last quote from Vanessa.
Yes, so I'm going to pull out a Bible verse. I think it's Psalm 133, I think will be my advice. It's not really advice. I feel like I haven't lived long enough to give good advice. My advice comes from the giants that I stand on, so
I love it.
AKA everybody who came before me. So keeping in the theme, I think my verse that I would put out there is Psalm 133, which is, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." Or how great, I think one of the NIV or something is like, how great it is to live with each other in happiness. And that's like, yeah, that's what it's like. That's my outlook on life is like, I mean, I've been hurt by a few people, but I'm so thankful I get to live in this world with all its people that God created. And I think that is such a blessing. So
I love that. Sorry. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
So exciting.
I feel like the way that you see the world is so beautiful because it's not just like fake surface level. It's like you see the beauty, but you also see it because of something deeper. Mm-hmm. And that's really beautiful. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Domo arigatou. And thank you so much to our listeners.
Oh yes, thank you.
We'll see you soon. Mata ne for now.